Okay, so when we're setting up the vertical jump test, I would say that there's gonna be 3 ways that you can test it. The first way would be using something that I would not officially use, but you can use to inform peak strength, what your height is, okay? What your vertical height is when you're jumping. And that can be like a tape test. So that's where we can use a sticky note or a piece of tape or chalk, and you can actually practice that, and you can hit something on a wall. You can jump into a wall, and then you can do that multiple times to try and raise your mark a little bit higher. And what you would end up doing in that situation is you would actually have your mark on the wall, and then you would put the tape where you end up touching. Again, I would not use that inside of an actual test, but it can be something that you can do, if you're at home or if you're just doing some simple type of training to actually inform peak strength. Now, when we get into vertical jump testing, that's gonna be a bit more official. I like to use here a Vertec here or a vertical jump mat. If we're using a vertical jump mat, the big aspect there is you're just gonna stand on a mat and you're gonna teach the athlete how to vertically raise themselves up and then land on the mat. We can get into the technique of that specifically, but the other aspect here is setting up a Vertec. And when we're setting up the Vertec, now what I like to do, okay, is on the Vertec, there's gonna be marks on the side here, and you'll see like 9.6 or 96 inches for 8 feet, 90 inches for 7.6, and it's gonna go up. At every pro day I've been to so far, they have used 18-inch mark, so they'll have an actual mark here at 18 inches, which is going to be 78 inches, and that's gonna be for 6'6". Everybody's hand always is in line with this, and what they'll end up doing is they'll move this up and down based off of how we establish where your shoulder joint is, and we're gonna show you that shortly. Now, what they end up doing then is we'll start here a little bit further back, and you'll hit this touch point when you get up to a high point, and that's going to be where your vertical jump is. When you're starting at that 18-inch mark, the very top touch point will be 42 inches, okay? And then it goes down, and each red is gonna be 6 inches. So we go from 42 to 36 to 30 to 24, and then down from 24 to 18. And then that's when it's set up at that specific distance. Now you can see where you're touching on a consistent basis. We just have to make sure every single athlete's hand is at the exact same spot on the Vertec machine. Do I prefer the Vertec over the vertical jump mat or the vertical jump mat over the Vertec? I think they each have a little bit of a downside. I think the vertical jump mat, we'll typically see some high school kids will have hip flexion here and they'll bend their knees. And then on the downside, they'll also land toey. If they land flat-footed, they're gonna have a better jump, okay? I think both can be relatively ideal. It's just, we're looking for a consistent result. Okay, so that's the big aspect here. Now we're gonna go into the technique that you can use on the Vertec that you can also use on the vertical jump mat. So one of the downfalls of the Vertec is that the setup is a little bit harder than the vertical jump mat. So if you have a really large group of kids, the vertical jump mat can get things rolling a lot faster. Now, in this specific case, we've got Connor here. Connor's gonna go right heel, okay? Right heel against the post to his right hip. And then he's gonna put his arm up, and then we're gonna bend this back here, go back like this, okay? And get it even a little bit tighter, and then we're gonna raise this up. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna loosen this part up, and I'm gonna get till we're at about 18 inches. Right there, we're at 18 inches, okay? 18 inches on our Vertec here is gonna be 6'6" or 78 inches on your Vertec. We know with Connor that if he would touch at the very, very top, that would be a 42-inch vertical. Okay, so this is where the technique comes into play. And I'm gonna go on this side of Connor here. The big aspect is we wanna think about counter movement, okay? So we don't want kids to take this really, really deep counter movement unless they're used to doing that, okay? Typically, what we wanna see with kids is we wanna see a nice knee flexion here, hip flexion where the torso comes forward a little, and then we wanna think about applying as much force down as we can to then project our body up. On top of that, we want to think about a big arm swing here that will bring through, we'll reach the peak here, we'll extend from the hip, extend from the knees, plantar flex, and then we'll reach and turn. And this is the one thing with the Vertec compared to the vertical jump mat. With the Vertec, you can get a couple more inches by rotating that torso, okay? You can't really do that on the vertical jump mat. So they each have a little bit of wiggle room on what the actual reading is gonna come back with, which is why sometimes, if you have like a force plate, that can really show you how much force along with jump height that you're gonna get back, and that's gonna help you really calculate the perfect test result. In this case, we're literally just looking for where you're at to help the app and to help peak strength and to help our program make better decisions. Okay, so Connor's gonna demonstrate here. And one thing I do wanna point out too, is that when we do our first jump, he can be like 6 inches back to a foot. And oftentimes you'll see, you will still jump forward a little, okay? You'll still jump forward a little bit. So he could even go, after a couple practice runs, we might see him drifting, and even after we give some cues, he might drift forward. On the first jump, when all of the tags are out, okay, you wanna be a little bit further back, just a little bit. As on the second jump, if you're at a combine, and the tags are forward, you can get more underneath it, okay? As long as you're able to really consistently hit that good arm swing here. And this is where a drill with pogo hop, stuff like that can come into play, because it's gonna help you feel that arm swing that you need to hit to then execute that vertical jump. So let's see it, Connor. Execute it perfectly. Okay, good. So Connor's got right there 29 just on that first jump, which is not bad, Connor, for coming out here and doing nothing. What's your best? 33. Okay, so 33, that's like good jump. He's just out here filming with us. So that's a good solid jump. We'll have him rest a little bit. I would recommend like 1.5 to 2 minutes at least, if not a little bit more. You go a little bit more than 2 minutes, you'll start to feel pretty good. You'll execute that second jump. So we picked up the pole here and we're gonna try to move these. Okay, and this is where you'll see with Connor, I'm gonna want him to be just a little bit more underneath, probably right around this point. Same counter movement, and we want a quick, rigid reaction, and then a big touch. Go ahead. Good. 30 inches, perfect. That's exactly what we want. Actually 30.5, that's good. 30.5, and what we can do over time is that now we can use that number to educate ourselves, to educate the system on how we want to continue programming moving forward. But the big thing here is the arm swing and the counter movement. No deeper than a quarter squat. You bend the knees, you bend at the hips, you bend with the chest coming forward, and make sure you swing with both. And on the Vertec, you're gonna turn that upper body slightly. On the vertical jump mat, you're gonna jump, and as you jump with the vertical jump mat, you'll jump, and then as you get in the air, you'll actually bring those arms back through. Okay, so that's another big aspect there. It's a slight different landing than off of the Vertec.